Christine Marie, and I am excited for our conversation tonight. And I actually really mean that. I'm curious to see where we go. We're going to be talking about the physical body and coming to know our physical selves. And y'all, this is something that I have really had to learn over the last year specifically. I had been so disassociated and disconnected from my physical body for the majority of my life. Actually, it kind of started when I was young in the church and just being effectively taught that, my physical body was something that uh, was to be covered and something that was, there was no real narrative around it other than shame, and how whatever, we never talked about anything in regards to real physical romantic intimacy. It was something that was kind of hush hushed and hidden. And even growing up, my mom would fast forward kissing moments in movies. Like, it was just, there was such a cloud and thus an intrigue over physical intimacy and connection in that way. But simultaneously, it also was preventing some really honest and realistic conversations that needed to take place about the body. And as such, I just avoided anything to do with it. I erred on the side of just leaning fully into what I was told in regards to how I needed to act and show up in the world and engage. And that procured me the relationships that I really desired, relationships with my parents and with my siblings and teachers. It was just like, let me do what I need to do in order to win and play the game that was presented before me. And it wasn't in any regards manipulative. It was really, let me abide by the rules you're setting forth so that I can do well and thus secure the love that I seek in return. And y'all, that is so often, the manner in which we will engage with life. Like, tell me what to do, tell me how to live, and I'll do it. And if we think about it, so many of us are operating from that place today, apart from consciously going back to those core beliefs that drive us every single day. And apart from the active, not just returning to them, but actually unpacking them and dismantling for the purpose of, let me undo, examine what's inside, and then either put it back up together, package it exactly as it was, great. Or let me undo it, open it up, see what's going on within, and then maybe see some real change because it's necessary, and therefore I own it. But the goal and intention with knowing, not just on the intellectual basis, the spiritual basis, the emotional basis, the physical basis, is let me return to every single real belief that is serving as a fundamental core foundation of this area of my life, and examine, what do I actually think? It's so much of knowing is taking ownership. It's moving from the victim to the hero of our own lives. It's moving from the role of sitting in the passenger seat to sitting in the driver's seat and taking onus of ourselves. But apart from the conscious effort to bring forth under examination those core beliefs that then inform the behavior in every regard, we're living on autopilot. We're living with someone else at the wheel because we have never done the work to actually unpack it in the first place. So when it comes to knowing ourselves, it is so involved. It really, really takes time, and it takes an intention as well. I was thinking about this while I was driving today. I intentionally turned off my music. I was in vertical alignment this morning, and I really felt led to turn off inputs over the next 2 weeks. And frankly, so I'm in Prince Edward Island, and I'm really self-isolating for about 10-ish days. And I feel uncomfortable. Like, I told my friend this morning, I was like, you'd think I'd be good at this by now. I've done this enough times where my body knows what to expect, but I actually think that that's why my physical body, I felt kind of queasy in my stomach at the thought of turning off inputs and turning off social and just completely disconnecting. And it knows the discomfort there. It knows what to expect in a sense, because this is the unknown. Like, it is expecting the unknown. And even still, even though I've moved through it multiple times, and I know that only good is going to come on the outcome, on the other side of this as the outcome, there still is a physical kind of alert going on within me, like, hey, this is scary. What's going to happen? I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to learn. I don't know what I'm going to walk away with. I don't know how I'm going to change in this process. But every single time I do something to this extent, whether it's 3 days, 7 days, 10 days, 47 days, which was my time in France and Italy, I come back changed to some extent or another. And frankly, going back 3.5 years ago, when I first started my journey of knowing, actually 4 years by now, when my husband first moved out, I was alone on our 14-acre property with our dog, and I was just entirely alone. And it was multiple days on end where I would work during the day, but it was like the second I shut my laptop, my body alerted me like, oh, it's time to grieve again. And it was almost like my body itself, void of my cognitive intention, heaved this like grievous sigh, like it's time to grieve. And it was intense and it was painful. And it was interesting at some points, almost having this out of body experience, watching me grieve the loss of my future and this man that I had given everything to and really, really worked for and fought for, just watching my life crumble before my eyes. And y'all, I've talked to 2 different men who are going through divorce. I did a 1-to-1 knowing arena with a woman who really was struggling with her marriage. Y'all, behind these facades of social media are some really real struggles on a relational level that I never got help for. And I never shared about it because I was so afraid that people would find me out. I was afraid that the truth about me would come forth. And so therefore I never got any real support in any regard that would have ever given me any kind of legs to stand on and really put up a good fight for the marriage. I did the best I knew how, but it was all predicated on these old belief systems. It was all predicated on these old models for me that frankly I didn't even want to follow and adhere to. So I was wondering why my life was broken, predicated and living in, rooted in broken models that I never even wanted to follow in the first place. So no wonder my life is disparate from my ideal because I've never named the ideal. I've never moved away from these old targets, these old models to live and abide by something new that I have intentionally curated to thus propel me towards my ideal. So we have to know our ideal. We have to know the past programming, and then we have to chart out the path to get there. What needs to be removed so that I can thus add something new in its stead. It's really like this analogy of a garden, and James Allen talks about this in the book As a Man Thinketh. It's this thin little book, 60 pages, and it's so brilliant. It's simple, and it's all about the concept of tending to our minds like we would a garden, pulling out by the roots these old programs, these old narratives, these old belief systems that are fundamentally driving our behaviors, the way that we show up in business, with our families, with our kids, with ourselves. And y'all, if we do not do this, if we do not pull up by the roots these old narratives, these old mindsets, to then have something new come in instead, we're just going to end up repeating the same behaviors. We're going to model what we saw before us. And we wonder why our lives look so similar to that of our parents, even though we try so hard not to. I'm so grateful for the environment in which I grew up in. I'm so grateful for my parents. I love them to death, and they know that. And they also know that there's some very real elements that I am proactively seeking to change and proactively seeking to grow. And it's so cool. We're actually all kind of doing it together now. But I need to do the work to identify each one of these core elements that I am seeing manifest as my life is falling apart 4 years ago. What's the genesis? What's the real root cause? And my parents need to do the same thing, because each one of them have a real root cause for why they showed up in relationship with each other, why they showed up in relationship with us, that was modeled for them. So y'all, it is so critical. I did a men's retreat in August last year. And it was, there were each gentleman, his father left him at as young as 6 months for one kid, as old as 12 for another. Each one of these men had their father leave. They had never seen a marriage modeled that would then allow for them to go in and do something likewise, to go and model something that was amiable and in alignment with their ideal. And they also never had a father to show them how to be the father that they needed and the father that they want to be. We're effectively making it up as we go, apart from the intention of putting in this new curated ideal. And I was thinking about this today. I get to have a head start by going into motherhood and crafting out this ideal for who do I want to be. And of course, it is so important to note that we need to be flexible with this ideal. And there is a pursuit element there, right? Where, it's not perfection, it's a pursuit. And the pursuit of perfection is really where we can get it's so damaging, because frankly, if I'm the one setting the ideal and I'm doing so where it's powered by love, not fear, then man, is the ideal just a gracious target rather than a harsh judge, like those that went before us. If I'm trying to model someone else rather than living vertical alignment with my ideal as the hierarchy, I'm coming into submission under the ideal rather than this thing that I'm grasping for, that's external, that's out there. Rather, let me bring myself under the guise and the rule of something that is pure and lovely to behold. And that is a gracious pursuit, and it's a gracious endeavor. It's not a harsh judge. So when it comes to this whole process of sitting and knowing our bodies, that's really the focus for tonight. As I did the work starting 4 years ago when my husband left, I would sit alone for hours and hours and days, and it was really at that like 3 to 4 day mark where my physical body was at this point where it had gotten kind of in the rhythm of the discomfort of the unknown. And at that point, it then kind of opens up so when I talk about our physical body, it's our 4 F's: the fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Each one of those parts of our each one is an activation of our primal brain when it feels threatened, when it's under duress, and it activates to keep us safe. So after we've taken the time and set up effectively the protocols to prove to our primal brain, hey, you're safe, through deep breathing, through literally sitting in and and when I say sitting, I mean literally like almost like soaking in the discomfort. When I feel it sensing in me and I can sense it in my stomach, man, I just close my eyes and I take a deep breath and I literally like relax into it, and I allow the discomfort to just permeate and wash over me, so that I can prove to that part of my primal brain where that's activated, hey, this is okay. I can handle this. I got you. Because the primal brain is activating for a very particular reason. It learned years and years and years ago, whatever we talk about the genesis, knowing the genesis of that discomfort in the first place, for whatever reason, it was for good reason. And so we need to actually hold so much graciousness and compassion for that primal instinct that's coming up, wanting so badly to keep us safe. It did its job long ago, and thank God for it. So there's kind of like a bless and thank you. You can go now. I've got it. And that's part of the maturing process. That's part of the growing up. It's the leaving behind the old narratives and thanking it, blessing it, and moving forward so that it's no longer holding us back. And, we were talking about forgiveness yesterday, and I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness actually today. And this whole concept of letting go by David Hawkins. And I've just been almost like examining forgiveness, like taking forgiveness out and just looking at all the different corners and edges of it, because it's so multifaceted. There's so many angles and applications, right? Because forgiving ourselves is very different than forgiving our partner, which is very different than forgiving somebody who is a third entity who wrongs us in a very binary way. So there's all these different layers and aspects of forgiveness that are so fascinating to me. And I was just examining it today. There's something about forgiveness that is actually a very core part of this ability to move forward from these old belief systems and programs that we are leaving behind. They're no longer coming with us. And what I have seen time and time again, and frankly, what I've struggled with myself, has been this, it's almost like this, I'm holding this thing that needs to go, and and I'm starting to feel angry. And we talked about this yesterday. Oh, it's so full circle. I love it. When we recognize the truth about something that needs to go, when we recognize the truth about something that actually, yes, it kept us safe in the past. For example, if we've got, back to some of these retreats that I've hosted, talking to different individuals who've attended and just hearing these really damaging stories of, their dad just yelling and raging and beating and hitting and just so much physical abuse and psychological abuse. Their body shut down and their brain disassociated, kind of like detached from the moment. Well, that actually really kind of kept them safe during that time. That was their primal brain activating to protect them from a physical threat and an emotional threat, a psychological threat. And thank God for that. But now, today, if they're in a partnership and their wife or their husband or their children raise their voice, how then can they train their physical body to effectively unlearn that old behavior of shutting down, going inward, disassociating? How do they handle that? And this has been something that has been so incredibly important to really dive into. It's actually going back to those moments in time where our body learned a specific coping mechanism and actually going back, returning to that point in time. And there's different therapeutic practices for this, especially depending on the severity of it. But going back to those moments in time and really lovingly being tender and like giving TLC to that little kid or that little girl or boy that was so damaged back then. Because until we do that, our body is stuck at age 12 with our dad yelling at us and raging at the world around him. And so until we actually return to our 12-year-old self and literally do the healing work necessary, and for some of us, it's as complex or as simple as really releasing it through emotional release. It's kind of go moving through the trauma cycle for that age and period in time where we got stuck on an emotional level. And I've heard this analogy, which I really, really love, of effectively we have to go through the emotional tunnel. We have to complete the entire process of moving all the way out of the emotion. Otherwise, the emotion is literally trapped in our body. And this book, man, it's brilliant. Bessel van der Kolk is a psychologist who actually coined the phrase and really stumbled upon and created the concept of post-traumatic stress disorder. Y'all, 40, 50 years ago, people were thrown into psych hospitals because people didn't understand why all of a sudden they would just break out in a violent rage because they didn't understand how our bodies store stress, and it stores and traps these memories, these emotional traumas, until we actually move through the emotional process and let go of them. And then our body can actually kind of catch up, even in age. There's different parts of us where our body is physically stuck at that old age. So through moving through and kind of completing the trauma cycle back at that time, through revisiting it, going back, we can then progress into the present moment and then re-examine, okay, this emotional reaction that I'm having right now is from the past. I understand where from the past it is, the memory, the moment. And when we talk about forgiveness here and the ability to actually move through that emotional cycle and actually let that past moment go, that's why forgiveness is so important, because in order for us to actually complete the emotional cycle, we really have to be able to turn inward and tend to ourselves rather than being so fixated on that person who made us so angry. It's so interesting. I just have been seeing so much more how forgiveness truly is for us. Yes, I actually do believe that there is something very powerful about choosing to forgive the other person for their sake. However, man, it is so, so important that we have the ability to let go of what they have done and go inward and actually tend to ourselves. For so long as my gaze is fixed external and horizontal, I will never be able to come back into vertical alignment. And I actually was reading Letting Go by David Hawkins, and I really, really loved this one section that he was talking on regarding this process as it pertains to, I actually utilized this when I was in conflict with someone the other day. Well, I'm going to read it to you. It's a little bit long, so bear with me, but it actually helped me move out of conflict pretty instantaneous. It was really powerful. So he's talking about opinions as it pertains to pride. If we look at opinions, we will see that they are a dime a dozen. Everybody on the street has thousands of opinions on subjects, and their opinions change from moment to moment and are vulnerable to every passing whim of fashion propaganda. And today's in opinion is tomorrow's out opinion. This morning's opinion is passé by this afternoon. We can ask ourselves, do I want to spread out my vulnerability to attack by so extensively identifying with all these passing thoughts and calling them mine? Everybody has an opinion on everything. So what? When we look at the true quality of opinions, we will stop giving them as much value. If we look back on our life, if we will see that every mistake we ever made was based on an opinion, we become much less vulnerable if we put our thoughts, ideas, and beliefs, which are all opinions, into a different context. Y'all, this is so powerful. It changes everything. We can view them as ideas that we like or dislike. Some thoughts give us pleasure, so we like them. Just because we like them today doesn't mean we have to go to war on them tomorrow. We like a concept so long as it serves us and we are getting enjoyment out of it. Of course, we discard it readily when it no longer is a source of pleasure. When we look at our opinions, we see that it is primarily our emotions that are giving them any value in the first place. Instead of feeling pride about our thoughts, what is wrong with just loving them? Why not just love a certain concept because of its beauty, because of its inspirational quality, or because of its serviceability? If we view our thoughts that way, we no longer need the pride of being right. If we hold the same thought of our likes and dislikes, we are no longer prone to argumentativeness. For instance, if we love the music of a certain composer, we no longer need to defend it. We might hope that our companion would love it too, but if not, the worst is that we might feel mild disappointment if at all, not being able to share something that we personally value and enjoy. Y'all, what this is saying is that if we can effectively disassociate our opinions, thoughts, beliefs from ourselves and just say, oh, that's something I enjoy. Let me put it out here. Like the example of what I was saying earlier, of taking forgiveness and examining it. Oh, what is forgiveness? And being so curious about it. And y'all, this is where it's so powerful. Man, I want to, God help me explain this, because honestly, I'm figuring it out myself, and not even figuring it out. I'm putting it into words for the first time. So bear with me. This is why we're on the Knowing Show. Y'all, there is something so powerful about understanding the difference between our emotions and our feelings. This is probably one of the most life-changing things that I've experienced. Emotions are a natural, automatic, physical, it's a sensation in our body that manifests in a physical way. So all of a sudden, I feel this like heat behind my face, and I just feel this rage. It's actually manifesting in my physical body, the emotion, and it's instantaneous. It's automatic. I actually cannot control the automatic feeling. I can control the execution of it, and what I do in response to the emotion. But this is what feelings are. So the emotion is the physical kind of automatic response, sensation in our body. But the feeling is the thought that I form about the emotion. So if I have an emotion in me and I feel tears welling behind my eyes, then I say in my mind, and I have a thought about it, oh my gosh, this is because X, Y, and Z. So thoughts and emotions and feelings are so incredibly important to differentiate, because if we damn emotions, we're damning something that is innately in us. And if we silence it and suppress the emotion, we're actually silencing something that we literally have to let go of and have to express and have to get out. There's an outpouring of that emotion. It doesn't, again, we have full control over what that looks like. But even if it's just taking a deep breath and breathing out, it's the physical release of that emotion. That emotion is coming up within us. It has information. It has data. Our emotions, this is why we talk about emotional intelligence, becoming intelligent to what that emotion is arising in us, trying to communicate. It has something to say, and we have to pay attention. And this is where curiosity is so interesting, because feelings, the thoughts we have about that emotion, have to go checked. It has to go under the magnifying glass of our true selves coming in and saying, okay, what does this emotion have to say? What's the thought that I instantly had about it? Is that thought actually true? Because y'all, so much of our emotions today are actually about something that happened in the past, and therefore our present day thought is actually misattributed in terms of source. So, what we're angry about here in this present moment, or upset about, feeling anxious about, even feeling afraid of. How many times have I felt afraid of something here in the present moment? And then when I really actually pay attention to that thought, I'm like, oh, that's actually not true. I'm actually not in that environment anymore. So I have to retrain my body. I have to retrain my emotional nervous system to have a new data point associated with that. That's why we have to go back to the past, understand the roots, because that's the source of the data. We have to update. It's like a computer. We have to update our source code. And so the more we can actually update the source code, we're updating the root system that is tied to an emotion, so that now the emotion is updated and it knows I'm actually not in an emotionally abusive relationship anymore. I'm safe. But we have to train our body that it is. But we cannot train ourselves to change a behavior, to change a source code, unless we know it to begin with. So we know for the purpose of change, but in order to then know it, we have to travel back and do the proper attribution. We have to know our attribution of the data, of the source, to then be able to either cultivate it or change it. It's the same thing, honestly, when it comes to marketing, when it comes to business, when it comes to any type of real intelligent decision. We have to look at the source. We have to look at the data. And our emotions have data for us, our feelings, our thoughts about the emotion. And frankly, our feelings are really the things that can really hype us up and work us up, and actually prevent us from moving through the emotional release that would otherwise allow for us to kind of maintain a status quo. I had this experience in March of last year, maybe it was April. I was in a conversation with someone. They said something to me, and immediately it triggered a memory from my previous marriage. And I had been, divorced for about 2.5 years at that point. Man, even divorce, saying that word divorce, y'all, it's still hard for me. There's still, I really struggle with the fact that I'm divorced still. I feel like most days I'm good and it doesn't get to me, but some days just saying it, I'm like, how is this my life? Um, and that's the letting go thing, right? It's wild how this work of knowing and allowing for healing really impacts every area, even just in conversations like this. So, y'all, I was sitting in this hotel. The person leaves. I'm about to host the Knowing podcast. I'm about to have all these guests show up, and I've got the videographer coming in, and my friend leaves. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden my body freezes, because my body knows that in my previous marriage, shit was about to go down. It would have been so painful. It was like an emotionally dangerous situation when my friend said what he said. So what I did in that moment, my body was freezing and tensing, and in that moment, I knew that my feelings were starting to come, which was the thought about the emotion I was about to have. And instantly I took the thought captive, and I was like, no, all right, let me breathe through this. I know the source of this emotion. The source is my former marriage. I'm not in that marriage anymore. That person is not my former husband. They're my friend. I know that they want what's best for me. And really just tending to myself. Y'all, so many aspects of why we feel disassociated from the present moment is because we're disassociated from ourselves. We're not actually honoring our physical body. I looked at my hands the other day, and I would encourage you to do this. I was reading a book, and it literally was like, just look at your hands. And I was like, wow, like, I never pay attention to my body. I'm in this body. And I'm living always 5, 10, 20 seconds in the future that I'm not actually here looking at this wood table in front of me, feeling my body, paying attention to the AC unit and the gentle hum of it, listening to the birds, like tuning into the reality of the present. But our physical bodies has so much to communicate, so much data. This morning during vertical alignment, I just had this thought. Our nervous system is effectively like the connective tissue between our inner world and that which is the physical. So if our nervous system isn't being honored and listened to, and our nervous system is out of whack, we're actually fundamentally going, wow, this is so intense. I've never really realized this until now. And just again, putting it into words. If our nervous system is off because of improper attribution to the past for the present moment, we're going to see the world through a lens of what is not true because our nervous system is so locked and holding on to things of the past that no longer exist in the present. And how in the world can we hope to ever capitalize on anything in the future, reach our ideal, reach our potential when our bodies are locked in the past, preventing our ability to even see the truth about the present? One of the biggest things has been my pursuit of truth over the last 4 years because I just lived with this cloud, with this like haze, where it wasn't just, yes, looking to the right and to the left and looking to everyone around me being like, tell me who to be, tell me what you want. I will do anything possible to make you happy. But I also was so fundamentally disassociated from this physical body that I just turned it off, shut it off. And so I really didn't know what was true because I was so disassociated from my own experience, physically, emotionally, otherwise. This is what it means to come under vertical alignment. It's the activation of all of our intelligences so that every part of our intelligence, every part of us is actually turned on. Our online switch is turned on and we're in an activated sense of presence and being so that we're alert, we're awake. Y'all, I feel like life started 4 years ago when I actually woke up. I can remember things. And so when we talk about our physical body is like that veil between our inner self being able to fully be able to exist in this physical world. It's like I'm like kind of seeing it in my mind's eye. It's like the intersection of this existential and physical reality meeting. It's that nervous system. And y'all, if we're not actually tending to it, man, we're going to be so out of whack. Our concept of what is true and reality is never going to be actual. It's never really going to be in alignment with. Do you guys ever feel this way? I have felt this so many times where I'm saying something to a friend of mine, my parents, my partner. The words are coming out of my mouth, and I can just see they're not hearing me. And vice versa. I feel like, why can't I understand what you're saying? Well, because my nervous system is filtering what they're saying. And I'm not able to really hear with clarity because my old wounds are fundamentally blocking me from being able to engage in the present moment. The past has its like talons hooked into me and hooked into you until we do the work to break free. And breaking free is predicated in knowing and thus allowing for uprooting the past, its talons and its hooks, so that we can walk in the freedom of the present moment. But we have to be brave enough to sense and fully know the emotion, because knowing the emotion is to know the data and then allow for something new to be put in its stead. It's to change the data source. And to change the data source, we have to do the work to really understand the genesis and understand the impact. And so, with how to do that, really go proactively. I've done this in live events, and frankly, I've done this in business and in the knowing retreats. Everyone has found this to be so beneficial. Actually, somebody reached out to me the other day and was like, I wrote a book because of this exercise. So do this exercise. It's 3 questions. This is part of the knowing framework. Who was I? Who do I want to be? Or who am I? Who do I want to be? So who was I? This is the past. This is identifying a core memory or core moment. Identify one. What is that one story, that one narrative, that core memory that really, really has shown up in today? Who am I today? That core manifestation. So there's a manifestation of something that's unhealthy tied to a core memory. And then the question is, okay, and a chief example of this is, man, I really have struggled with being vulnerable. Well, the big reason for that is because I don't want to show anything other than pleasant emotions. Well, I don't always feel pleasant, and I don't always, that's not my authentic state of being, is pleasant. But growing up, I experienced disconnection as a result of showing negative emotion. If I showed negative emotion, I would get spanked and punished. And so what I learned to do was suppress the negative emotion, only ever to communicate joy and love to people around me so that I could get what I wanted and needed, which was emotional connection and emotional relationship and love at the end of the day. And that's what every single one of us wants. Y'all, our desire for love and connection and belonging does not end when we're out of adolescence, when we're out of childhood. It is ongoing at all times. We never stop needing it in adulthood. And so when we can stop shaming that part of us that feels like a child for wanting that tenderness and wanting that loving care, then we can actually start being brave enough to show up in the vulnerability. We can start sharing what we want and asking for it. And then we can see real change, and we can find relational connection predicated in the truth. So, the reason I'm bringing this up as an example is because a core memory, which was when I was 3 years old, I had Lyme's disease. I was in a lot of pain in my knee, and I ended up crying and I got spanked for it. And that really solidified that narrative. Well, now that I know that, I can see how that shows up in who am I today, which is the manifestation of a lack of vulnerability. Okay, that's not who I want to be. So then who do I want to be? What How do I change that? Well, now that I can go back to the core memory, I can actually uproot it. I can plant a new seed, which is, no, I actually do want to be vulnerable. I actually do want to be brave. I want to have courage to show up. I want to have courage to share, I'm not happy today. I'm really struggling. And I want to have courage to ask for help. All of that is vulnerable. All of that is completely new behaviors of a core belief that I want to be vulnerable. But I have to do the work to answer the question of who was I? What's that core memory? The manifestation of that today, and who am I? And then who do I want to be? Guys, we have to outline, clarify that target of what does that actually look like in my inner being? What does that look like in my external doing? So being vulnerable, that's my ideal. Doing vulnerability looks like being willing to ask for help. It looks like receiving help. It looks like communicating, I'm afraid to ask for help right now. It's so important to identify the internal and external, the being and the doing of this ideal, because otherwise we're still going to have a lack of congruency between the belief and the behavior, the principle and the practice. We need to outline exactly what this looks like and chart it out. Y'all, I create tables of contents, or not tables of contents, it's like charts in my Word docs when I'm doing vertical alignment. I'll like outline, I need to move from here to here, here to here, here to here, and get so specific, because apart from intentionality, we're going to live on autopilot with all of those old programs at the helm. And part of this process is by being alone, taking time in the discomfort. The thought of being here alone for 10 to 14 days in Prince Edward Island is uncomfortable. All of my people are at a conference right now in San Diego, and I'm here doing the work, and I'm like, oh, I love people. And what that also means is that when I go back home, I actually really want to be investing in community. I'm going to need that when I go home. And what's even more vulnerable than just recognizing I need it, I actually need to communicate that. I need to actually use my words to speak the truth and communicate the truth, because how often do we actually know something cognitively and don't ever express it emotionally? How often do we live disparate between our inner and outer worlds, and no one has a freaking clue what's really going on inside of us? Y'all, I look back, oh, it's so devastating. I look back on journals from after my brother-in-law was killed. And no one had any idea just how devastated I was, just how, oh gosh, depressed, broken. Like no one had any idea. And frankly, I barely did either because I just was so detached from my own self. Because here's the reality: that which we shame in others, we shame in ourselves. That which we shame and judge for us to do in front of somebody else, we shame and judge for our own selves. So, what that means is if I learned that vulnerability is to be punished, I'm going to shame that so that when I feel weak, not only am I not going to say it to somebody else because of shame, I actually shame that part of me that is feeling sad. I'm like, stop it. You shouldn't feel anything negative. Your life is so good. And so, with every good and every beautiful thing in life, there is always a shadow. And for every single shadow, there's always a light to it. And so, this whole concept of that I'm talking about in terms of vulnerability and like shaming the negative feelings, what's the light there? And this is actually a really beautiful exercise because the light there is that I bring, man, I am so good at alchemy. I am so good at taking something that's negative and shining a lens of beauty on it, of magic, and like I want to make every freaking day of my life magic somehow, some way. And I really do have this awesome superpower to do that, just like you do. But what that also can do, the darkness and the shadow of that is that I can ignore the truth. Is, man, I'm really struggling right now. I really need help. Man, I am not doing well. I need help. So there, the light and shadow, this is where it's really important, is that those aspects of, okay, that's the core memory. That's how it manifests. This is my ideal target. Understanding, like I was saying, we need to bring forgiveness out and analyze it. We need to take these core values at, into the limelight and analyze each side and each corner of it because there is light and there is shadow. Like, what do I run to risk by being vulnerable? Well, probably if I'm learning vulnerability for the first time, I might vomit vulnerability on everybody. That can be a shadow to vulnerability. And so really understanding, like just getting comfortable with looking at the truth is something that, man, I'm still working on. Y'all, I'm working on this in business too. I'm building out this whole community, this whole brand for tradespeople. I'm so excited about this. My family has a 100-year-old painting business. A lot of men are in this field, the trades field, and I just feel really passionate about this industry. And I've been advised on multiple occasions, do not talk about emotional health. Do not talk about this topic. No one's going to be interested in it. All these men are gritty and they do the work and they just want to talk business. And I know in my core, I'm like, no, that's not the truth. The truth is that I want to see emotionally healthy men, women, children, families, businesses, communities, education systems, governments. I know what happens when we're only pursuing the spiritual part in our life, living all pious, high and mighty in the clouds, going to church every Sunday, and then the rest of our life is disconnected from it. Or we're emotionally broken, yet espousing the name of God. I know also what it is to show up and do business so well, and then go home and your entire family hates you. I've seen emotional discord and the dissonance that comes when one of our intelligences or more are turned off and shut off and we're not living in the truth. And so I would be fundamentally dishonest and living out of alignment if I was to not bring this as a core part of my brand for craft and calling, because that is my mission. And so it takes courage. When we talk about this book, Letting Go by David Hawkins, he talks about there's different emotional numeric value, or I'm sorry, there's different numerical values with each emotion as we move up the scale. And the lowest number, I'm actually going to look at that really fast because, man, I just love this concept. The lowest number, I believe, is fear, the scale of emotions. So the lowest is shame. And we were talking about shame tonight. So what are we shaming about in ourselves? And then you move up from shame and you go to guilt. Then you go to apathy. Then you go, actually, I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to start at the highest number. The highest numerical value in terms of emotion is peace. And then you move down to joy. And then you move down to love. Then you move down to reason. Then acceptance, willingness, neutrality, courage, pride. And I'm at the point of talking about courage in the book, and I just love this. Pride, anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, shame. Shame is the lowest. And y'all, so much, I actually find myself ebbing and flowing from peace to shame and everything in between. And so, man, it's a cool thing that we actually can train ourselves to exist in life at a different emotional state than our mother, our father, our generations before us. We have all of the power and ability to change our future by changing our internal selves. And in terms of knowing, we talk about knowing ourselves. I have come to know my calling by way of knowing myself. I have come to know what I want my future life to look like because of knowing myself. My ideal is so set forth. I wrote my eulogy and I love who that woman is. And I can be her today. I don't have to wait until I die. Sure, some of the physical doings thereof might happen later on, after when I'm 60 years old, 80 years old, but I can be the internal woman now. But I have to do the work to move through which parts of my life are at a lower emotional numerical value. Where am I not able to bring a higher amount of value because my emotional state is so low? I'm operating in guilt. I'm operating in apathy. I'm operating in pride. My ego is really getting in the way. So if we want to actually get to a higher level of ability to exist that brings, man, guys, our presence brings such a blessing to people. It really does. My neighbor, my sister's neighbor, she calls out from the house next door and she's like, "Hi, Smiley." Like she and everybody else that I come across, and every single person you come across, we have the ability to bring a presence and an energy to every single room, to every single person, if we so choose. If we choose. And that's what Viktor Frankl, freaking in Auschwitz, identified as the greatest of all human freedoms: choice. You can strip away everything, but you cannot choose how I am going to emotionally respond. You cannot take away my intellect, my emotion, my spirit, my soul, you can even hurt my physical body. So y'all, this is why we need to come to know the body, because our nervous system is the very thing that can actually cloud and prevent our ability to see the truth. It can twist the words of someone across the table from us, sitting right next to us. It can twist and distort the truth itself. And we can do it to our own selves if we're looking at what our emotions are trying to say to us through the lens of shame. So in order for us to know the truth, we have to lift ourselves out of that kind of emotional dump that it talks about with guilt, shame, apathy, anger, pride. All of those clouds our ability to see. So the more that we're able to listen and respect what our physical body is telling us. I wrote this down earlier as I was thinking about this conversation. The physical release of the emotion is so important, to let go of it. But intuition, the Latin root word of intuition is intuere, which means to be taught from within. Intuere is the translator of that emotion. Our feelings aren't, because our feelings are predicated in the past. That thought about the emotion, that feeling is going to be an improper voice, I guess you could say, an improper translation, because it gives improper attribution. It's rooted in old data, whereas intuere, the true source from within, it's able to come from like our core true self, rather than a thought about that's biased. Feelings are biased, and emotions have an authentic data that we need to pay attention to. We need to listen to it. And then we get to, with intention, update its source. We get to update the ultimate source code for every single emotion with intention, given that we allow our body the time and honor and reverence to move through the emotional tunnel, to let go of it in the first place. And then we can move into the state of, okay, well, what do I want in its stead? And those three questions: Who was I? Who am I? And who do I want to be are so critical. And in terms of the order, I actually ask the question, who am I first? Because then I can say, oh, man, where did that ego freaking come from? And I can trace the roots and I can go down to that core memory and be like, ah, that's who I was. It's showing up today and that's not who I want to be. And it takes time, but it's really fun when we're able to be curious and extend love. If we're doing the work in the moment because of conflict with another person, it's way harder to, rather than to enter the arena by our own volition and by our own accord, by our own decision and intention, because then we feel so powerful in going in and saying, okay, I'm going to take my life back. And y'all, that is forgiveness. I had this thought come to mind when I was really contemplating forgiveness. I just had this like vision of this little kid wearing like a cape, like a little hero. And what forgiveness is that it's effectively taking the other person that I have allowed to be at the pinnacle of my mountain, it's taking them off the mountain and it's me returning to my place. And it's having the honor and the wherewithal to respect myself enough to, and respect the other person enough to say, you know what, I've actually put you in the wrong role. I've put you in the driver's seat of my life. I've put you on the pinnacle of my mountain. I'm going to let you be on yours. I'm going to let myself be in the driver's seat of my life, because otherwise we're going to be placing so much, it's so much weight looking to someone else to run our life for us. It is so much weight. And here's the thing. If we take someone else out of the driver's seat of our life, yes, we get the power back. We get the opportunity to be the hero of our lives, but we also are stripped of every excuse. Now we have no one to blame but ourselves. And so actually it's safe and comfortable and relatively easy to let someone else be the fall guy for us, rather than us stepping up, rolling our shoulders back and saying, I'm going to do the work. I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be courageous. And just like David Hawkins talks about leveling up in an emotional frequency, if we do that, courage is one of the first ones after pride. It's like, okay, I'm going to be responsible. I'm going to assume radical responsibility for who I am. I'm going to assume radical responsibility for this life because it is worth living. And out of respect for me and out of respect for my creator, I'm going to live the life as I was, not even live the life, but live in the being and in the personhood that I was created to be, that I was designed to be, that is the opportunity of my very life, that I get to be this person. And y'all, that is what is so exciting, is that we have this beautiful gift. We have this beautiful opportunity, but we have to be willing to become acquainted with it. And it's uncomfortable, but it's really exciting. It's the unknown. And in the unknown lies creation. In the unknown lies something new. And the process of becoming is always hard, but we don't have to do it alone. And that's what's so, so exciting. So I am going to wrap up here. But before you jump off, go over to verticalalignment.com, and there's 21 free vertical alignments. It's just a gift for you. I actually made them over my birthday weekend because I just wanted to have something to give to you. They were the very one thing that everybody from all of the retreats asked for was, can I please have daily vertical alignments? They're prompts. They're exercises to walk you through. And actually, I'm planning to, in the next probably 6 months, actually turn them into videos so that you can close your eyes and listen as I talk us through it, rather than having to read it and then go do the exercise. So I'm excited for getting to that stage. But for now, head over to verticalalignment.com and you can go ahead and get your vertical alignments, and you can start tomorrow morning. So with that, I wanted to thank you all